What is going on, people? If you couldn't tell by the title of this video, you might be wondering why I'm wearing this ridiculous, ridiculous costume. Well, what I'm going to do is take it off. And like I said, if you couldn't read the title, we're here for my review on the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie. It's the first time I watched it. I picked it up today. And I must say a few things. I'm going to get a few things off my mind. First of all, I'll tell you what I disliked about the movie, and then I'll tell you what I liked about the movie. Me, this movie here, it wasn't horrible. I'll say that much. It wasn't horrible, but I just, let me just say, I didn't have too much hope for it going into it. So it beat my expectations, but still it had stuff that I knew I wasn't going to like. Stuff that I read about, stuff that people said, stuff that, I kind of went into it knowing parts of it. So I'm going to go into depth with this one. Well, like I said, it's the first time I ended up watching this movie. And I'm going to tell you the flaws about it, which I didn't like. I guess you can call me a little biased because I grew up watching the originals, and first thing off the bat is I didn't like how everything was CGI. Nowadays, you know, most CGI looks pretty good. It's visually, I guess, appealing, but most of the time you look at it and you can tell it's fake. There's certain points where it's very, better than others, I guess you can say, and then sometimes you can't tell. But I grew up early 90s with this movie, and when I was younger, they looked real. I couldn't tell that they were fake. When I was younger, I actually believed they were real. Why? With the prosthetics, with everything else, they looked realer. This, they just look too fake. That is my major beef. That's the top overall is the fact that they're CGI turtles. Um, did they look as bad as I was watching the movie? From the trailers, it looked ridiculous. The movie itself, I mean, they were ridiculous, but to tell you the truth, it wasn't as horrible as you were watching it and as they were moving. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So that, kind of gave it a little bit more. That's why I didn't, I guess, hate it as much as I thought I was going to. There were parts where they looked better than others. There were other parts where it just looked so fake. At certain parts, certain action scenes, it looked ridiculous and everything. So that was my major gripe with it. Another thing I didn't like about this movie was the fact that the Foot Clan were like not not even like ninjas. They had guns. They had it just wasn't the same Foot Clan from the previous movies. Another thing was the fact that Shredder was not Shredder. He reminded me of a new Transformer or something. They were trying to, Michael Bay is known for his over the top stuff with the Transformers and stuff, and it just seems like it took that form. Like it wasn't Shredder. All these machine like stuff and the uh, swords and everything that were coming out. I don't know. It just wasn't. It wasn't the same thing. I mean, those are my major gripes, and you know, it just wasn't the same. I guess it's also because again I grew up loving this series, the Ninja Turtle series. Uh, this right here, all three movies were some of my favorite movies growing up. So I mean, I knew it was going to take a lot to live up to what I was expecting of stuff nowadays. And nowadays, too many movies rely on the visual aspect. This had a good plot line, I must say. The whole movie itself, the plot was pretty cool. Something a little bit different. It wasn't exactly to the storyline. It was a little bit off, April O'Neil. This whole video is going to be a big spoiler, I guess, which I will put on the bottom. But April O'Neil was there from the beginning. She saw these. She had these little turtles, and pretty much she was the one who saved them and everything. Saved Splinter. So that put a different, view on the storyline. How Shredder has an accomplice, and they were gonna spread this disease, and they were gonna use the mutagen uh, to cure everybody with this disease, which threw a different spin on it, but it was an interesting story, so I can't really knock it on that. The stuff I did like, which I thought was pretty cool, even though they were in CGI, I kind of found it interesting how each turtle, had their own size. Like in the previous movies, they all were the same size. They all, acted pretty much the same. In this one, each one has their own size, has their own, the acting itself wasn't great. I mean, it was a little bit too, modernized, I guess you want to call it, with like a whole bunch of rap, and they were acting all like, I don't know how you call it. They just weren't acting like they did in the previous ones, because of course it's a big difference between the two, almost 20 years or so, or over 20 years from the original one. But I mean, another thing which I forgot to mention that I really didn't like was the fact that they were like super super strong. Like at one point it seemed like Raphael was throwing the freaking cars and trucks around, which was a little bit too much. It was, you know, I understand they're stronger, but was like superhuman strength, like Superman kind of deal, which was a little off. But like I did say, the interesting part, which I did find interesting, was the fact that they did make, Raphael was the biggest one. He was almost looked like a juice head kind of deal. Donatello, being the smart one, was smaller and scrawnier. Leonardo had his thing was pretty cool. He had like a armor plate on or whatever, which looked pretty cool. And Michelangelo, was the goof, which didn't fall too far from what he kind of was in the original movies. But I don't know. The voices also threw me off. You had Johnny Knoxville, which I just think of him as like a goofball. So I don't know. I just I guess it's me personally didn't like him voicing Leonardo, who's supposed to be the leader and everything. Every time you can definitely tell Johnny Knoxville's voice, and I just consider Johnny Knoxville from Jackass. He's a goofball. If he was the voice of Michelangelo, I wouldn't have had any problem with it. Him being the leader, I just didn't like that whole thing. But I don't know. I mean, it took me forever to watch it. I didn't want to go see it in theaters, and then I knew I was going to get the movie, even though I was saying, I might not get it. I eventually went out and got it. But I'm gonna tell you, overall, it isn't, it isn't bad. What it is pretty much a new aged Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Kids are gonna look at it and now have their own view. Like this was my childhood. I'm knocking everything over, but these movies right here were my childhood. This is the childhood for a new generation. This, it's a sign of the times, which you can't really change it unless you do something. I don't really agree with it. A lot of these movies nowadays, like I said, rely too much on visual aspects. Some have really good plot lines, but the main thing they go for is the visual stuff. You're watching it and you're mesmerized by these visuals, by the action scenes and everything, which is now the sign of the time. Back then, in my opinion, the '90s movies were a whole lot better. The acting seemed a little bit better. A lot of people in this didn't like Megan Fox's April O'Neil. I really didn't have a problem with it. she's not the greatest actress, but you know, even in the other movies, April didn't really have a. She actually had a bigger role in this one than the other ones. April O'Neil was like a kind of a bigger side character, if you want to call it. So I can't really knock on her too much. Meaning Megan Fox, you couldn't really knock on it too bad. But overall, I'd say if for entertainment wise, watch it. But I'm still not totally sold on this movie. Uh, for what it was all right. Um, Better than I thought it was going to be, I guess you want to call it. But still, it's not the original. It's not gonna be one that I watch over and over and over. Like the original Ninja Turtles, I could pop that in, which I have been doing every night so far. Probably the past 4 nights, just because I knew I was building up for this. But this is another one that I'll probably watch maybe down the road if someone says want to watch this. Other The other ones I can pop in whenever I want to. This probably not as much. I probably watch it the first time and possibly again. Didn't really catch my fancy too great, but it may catch someone else's. So overall, I'd say if you want to watch it for entertainment value, go ahead. But if you're like me, just not the same. It's not the same, but it's not horrible. If you wanna go like that, yeah. I mean, I want to know what you all think. If you agree with me on my points, if not, if you enjoyed it, if you think it's better than the original, definitely let me know. Because I actually want to hear from everybody else what they think. See if I think alike. See if um, my thoughts are the same as yours. So if you agree with me, let me know. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. Again, thank you for watching. And yeah, I am going to actually watch The Maze Runner now because I also got that today. But uh, Ninja Turtles. All right.